When tech billionaire Eric Adams came home early that afternoon, he expected his mansion to be quiet, controlled. What he found instead nearly stopped him in his tracks. His maid, Karen Thompson, was standing beside his deaf daughter Anna, calmly teaching her sign language in the middle of the library. The sun slanted through the tall windows of his marble estate, casting a glow over the polished floors. Eric's Italian loafers clicked as he crossed the hall toward the library, and then paused. There, at the center of the room, stood Karen in her Navy maid uniform, gesturing gracefully in front of a whiteboard labeled Sign Language for the Deaf. Anna sat at the table, completely engaged, mimicking the signs with joy lighting up her face. Karen held up a hand, demonstrating the word love. Anna repeated it, then laughed, a silent burst of happiness so rare it caught Eric off guard. Please, thank you, more. Each sign landed like a small miracle. The same child who barely responded to her elite tutors was now expressive, alive, communicating. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Eric's chest tightened. He'd spent hundreds of thousands on the best speech pathologists in California. None of them had made his daughter smile like this. Something felt wrong. Too personal, too effective. He stepped into the room sharply. What the hell is going on here? Anna flinched. Karen turned slowly, unfazed, her expression composed, almost serene. I was just helping Anna with her reading comprehension, she said. She was frustrated, so I tried sign language to help her process the material. Her tone was respectful, but her eyes held something else. Intelligence, restraint, and an unshakable presence. Not the usual deference of a maid. Eric narrowed his eyes. You're paid to clean, not to teach. Karen nodded silently and began to gather her materials. Yet the method, the diagrams, the structured progression of the signs, was too precise. Professional. This wasn't improvised. She packed the whiteboard with careful order, like someone trained in educational psychology, not housekeeping. Her movements were practiced, methodical, academic. Eric watched in silence, a strange discomfort curling in his gut. That night, long after Anna had gone to bed, Eric couldn't sleep. The way Karen had taught, the way Anna had responded. It didn't add up. He stared at the security footage again, watching the silent exchange between maid and child like a scene from someone else's life. He picked up the phone and dialed his assistant. I want a full background check on Karen Thompson. Work history, education, everything. What Eric didn't know, not yet, was that Karen Thompson didn't exist before 3 years ago. And what he was about to uncover would not only shatter his image of her, but his own carefully constructed empire. The morning after the confrontation, the mansion was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet. Eric sat in his office, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, eyes fixed on the security monitor in the corner of his screen. He had ordered a full background check on Karen Thompson. It would take a day or two. In the meantime, he watched. The library camera showed Anna and Karen seated on the floor, a soft patch of sunlight framing them. Karen pointed to the word kind, written on a whiteboard. Anna copied the sign, hesitantly at first. Then, with a growing confidence that made her cheeks flush with pride, she smiled, beamed, and Eric froze. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen his daughter smile like that. Maybe when her mother was still alive. Karen clapped softly, signing back. Beautiful. Anna repeated it, laughing silently. It was like watching a different child. Alive, expressive, happy. And it irritated him. He muted the feed. Over the next few days, Anna and Karen developed a rhythm. Mornings began not with tutors or therapists, but with laughter echoing down the marble halls. Their sessions became a ritual. A whiteboard, flashcards, a small notebook filled with hand-drawn signs, and Karen's quiet, steady presence. Karen didn't just teach signs. She told stories with her hands, narratives full of dragons and clouds and dreams, using gestures, expression, and rhythm to bring them to life. Anna sat spellbound, following every movement, learning not just the language but its soul. One morning, Anna signed to Karen, "I feel seen." Karen paused for a moment, then signed back slowly. You've always been seen. You just need someone who speaks your language. At school, her teachers noticed the shift. Anna was suddenly engaged, eager to communicate, signing fluidly, even initiating conversation with classmates who had previously struggled to reach her. She's made more progress in 1 week than in 6 months, one teacher emailed. What changed? Eric didn't reply. Instead, he watched another recording, this one from the kitchen camera. Karen was baking cookies with Anna, using flour to trace signs on the marble countertop. Love, home, truth. Anna traced them back, giggling when Karen wiped flour across her nose. Eric leaned back in his chair, unsure what bothered him more, the fact that Karen was overstepping again, or the way his daughter had blossomed in her presence. That evening, he called Karen to the study. I want the lessons to stop, he said flatly. Karen didn't argue. She nodded once. Of course, Mr. Adams. There was no protest. No defense, just calm obedience. But something in her stillness unsettled him, like a violin string pulled taut but never plucked. The next morning, Anna waited expectantly in the library, hands ready, eyes wide. Karen didn't come. When Anna asked one of the other staff where she was, the answer was a quiet, "She's cleaning the guest wing today." Anna's shoulders slumped. She sat at the whiteboard anyway, tracing old signs with her finger. Later that evening, Eric found her in the hallway, staring at him. She signed, sharp, deliberate, and with tears in her eyes. You don't understand me? Eric didn't reply. He didn't know how. That night, Karen quietly returned Anna's notebook to her room. Tucked inside the front cover was a small folded note. Your hands are your voice. Never let anyone silence them. Miss Karen Eric found the note the next morning. He had gone to Anna's room to leave a signed permission slip on her desk, but his hand paused as he noticed the small sheet of paper tucked inside her workbook. He opened it, read it once, then again. The handwriting was elegant. The message, simple, unassuming, should have meant nothing, but it did, because it was everything he hadn't given his daughter, because it made him feel ashamed. He folded it back up carefully, as if it might shatter. Then he returned to his office, sat down, and rewatched the footage from the library. This time, he left the sound on, even though there wasn't any. Eric Adams had built a multi-billion-dollar empire on certainty. Algorithms, projections, clean lines, and cleaner data, that was the world he trusted. But now, nothing about the woman dusting his bookshelves and teaching his daughter to speak with her hands made any sense. He couldn't stop thinking about the note. Your hands are your voice. Never let anyone silence them. It was too precise. Too knowing? It didn't read like something a housekeeper would scribble. It read like something written by a teacher, a scholar, someone dangerous. He picked up the phone. Dylan, he said, I need you to dig into our housekeeper, Karen Thompson. I want everything. Background checks, employment history, references. Go deep. His head of security didn't ask questions. Give me a day, he said. Eric hung up and walked to the library. Karen was there, polishing the shelves in silence. Anna was at school. The room felt still, almost reverent, like whatever had happened here in recent days had left an invisible trace. He approached slowly. Karen, she turned, composed as always. Yes, Mr. Adams? I've been meaning to ask, he said, voice casual. Where did you learn sign language? Her eyes met his, steady. I picked it up over time. Impressive, he said. You have a gift, she smiled politely but said nothing. And before this? What did you do? A pause, just long enough to register. I worked with families, she said. Mostly caregiving. No degrees? Certifications? Karen tilted her head slightly. Sometimes the past doesn't define who we are. What we do now does. Eric nodded, masking the tightening in his chest. Fair enough, but her answer didn't sit right. It was too smooth, too controlled. And she'd deflected, gracefully but clearly. He left the room without another word. That night, Dylan called. Got your report, he said. It's odd, Eric sat forward. How odd? No official records before 3 years ago. Social Security number was issued in Georgia in 2022. No prior employment on file. No school transcripts, no licenses, nothing, Eric frowned. So she just appeared? Seems like it. She used a staffing agency. Yeah, they said she interviewed well. Quiet, polite, good references, but none traceable. Eric felt a chill creep up the back of his neck. Anything else? One thing, Dylan said. She paid in cash for the agency's placement fee. Not unheard of, but weird. Eric didn't sleep that night. Instead, he rewatched months of security footage. Not just of the lessons, but of Karen's routines. The way she handled Anna's books, the structured materials she prepared, the educational diagrams she erased a little too perfectly, the way she paused outside his study when he was on calls about NeuralGrid's education division, and the questions she asked during breakfast one morning. Does the Adams Foundation still support the Harding School? Weren't they the ones who implemented that merit-based admissions policy? Is it working for kids with learning differences? At the time, Eric brushed it off as idle chatter. Now, it felt pointed, strategic, too aware. What he didn't know was that Karen had already started building her own archive. Late at night, after her cleaning duties, she slipped quietly into the East Wing study, the one few people used anymore. There, on a borrowed tablet, she was copying files, internal memos from the Adams Foundation, policy drafts, emails from board members, championing merit over modification. She knew exactly where to look. She had once helped write them, but those files were different when seen from the outside, from the floor of a child's bedroom where voices weren't heard, from the heart of a girl whose hands had to beg to be understood. Karen wasn't just collecting documents. She was building a case. 2 days later, Eric's assistant, Lauren, knocked lightly on his office door. "You asked me to cross-reference any academic work with her name," she said, holding a tablet. Eric looked up. "And there's nothing for Karen Thompson. But," she flipped the screen toward him. This came up under Linguistic Studies at Stanford, published in 2015. The paper's title hit him like a punch to the chest. Bridging Silence: The Cognitive Pathways of Nonverbal Communication in Deaf Education. By Dr. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell. He stared at the photo beneath the byline. Tighter curls, a sharper suit, glasses, but it was her, Karen, or rather, Dr. Mitchell. Eric's fingers curled tightly around the edge of the desk. Who the hell was living in his house? And why had she hidden herself behind a mop and apron, only to show up now, teaching his daughter things no one else could? Whatever her reasons were, he was no longer just suspicious. He was obsessed. Eric Adams hadn't left his office in hours. The screen in front of him still displayed the academic paper from 2015, Bridging Silence: The Cognitive Pathways of Nonverbal Communication in Deaf Education, and the woman smiling from the author photo was unmistakable. Karen Thompson wasn't. She was Dr. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell, former Harvard Fellow, published linguist, keynote speaker at 3 international conferences on inclusive education. Her lectures had drawn packed auditoriums. Her research had been heralded as revolutionary in the deaf education space, and then suddenly, she disappeared. No new papers, no updated faculty page. Her name was scrubbed from conference circuits. Gone, as if someone had hit delete. Eric's pulse throbbed in his temple. He clicked deeper. The next few hours were a slow unraveling of a buried life. Karen Mitchell had spent over a decade advocating for inclusive education models, especially for deaf and nonverbal students. Her findings challenged traditional speech therapy, frameworks, and exposed inequities in elite, private schools that failed to adapt their curriculum for children with learning differences. In a 2016 panel, she'd publicly called out schools that relied on performance-based admission metrics that reward privilege and punish difference. Her words had caused an uproar, but Eric's heart sank as he recognized one of the schools she criticized. Harding Prep School, the Adams Foundation had proudly funded. She'd presented a case study linking Harding's rising test scores to the quiet expulsion of students with learning needs. A purge, disguised as academic excellence. The fallout was swift. Emails surfaced, a memo from the Foundation's board expressing concern over Dr. Mitchell's inflammatory rhetoric. Then came the withdrawal of grant funding, a peer-reviewed rebuttal from a colleague, one Eric remembered shaking hands with at a charity gala, discrediting her data with manipulated charts. Her university conducted a review of her ethics, and just like that, she was gone. Eric leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled over his lips. He hadn't known, not all the details, but his money, his name, had been behind it. His foundation, his board, he had helped erase her. And now, she was here. in his house, cleaning his floors, teaching his daughter. Why? Meanwhile, Anna remained blissfully unaware of the storm building behind the scenes. Each afternoon after school, she rushed home to find Karen. Their lessons had resumed, quietly despite Eric's previous order. But he hadn't stopped them. Not anymore. Instead, he watched from the shadows, silently, guiltily, as Karen guided Anna's hands into shapes that meant hope, truth, speak. At night, Anna recorded little diary entries on her iPad. Karen had suggested it. So your daddy can hear your heart someday. The videos were simple. Anna would sign about her day, her thoughts, her feelings, her favorite signs. Miss Karen says my hands are my voice, she signed one night, eyes bright. I never had a voice before. Eric watched that clip 6 times. It broke something in him each time. Later that week, he passed Karen in the hallway. She was carrying a basket of folded linens. She nodded respectfully. He said nothing, but that night he waited for her. She entered the library just after midnight, expecting the usual late-night vacuuming. But Eric was already there, sitting in the leather chair by the fireplace, a dim light casting shadows across his face. "Dr. Mitchell," he said. Karen didn't flinch. She placed the basket down slowly, then straightened, folding her hands in front of her. "I was wondering when you'd ask." Eric stood. "Why are you here?" Her eyes met his, steady, unafraid. "Because your daughter needed someone who could hear her. You could have gone anywhere." "Why this house?" "Why Anna?" Karen stepped closer. "Because this house helped silence thousands of children like her. And because she's worth the truth." Eric's jaw tightened. "You knew exactly who I was." "I knew what you represented," she replied. "What your board did. What your foundation destroyed. You came here for revenge?" She shook her head. "I came here to give your daughter what your money never could." A voice. They stood in silence, the words hanging between them like smoke. Eric couldn't speak, because at that moment, he finally understood. He had built an empire on data, systems, and silence, and buried the truth beneath it. And now, the truth was standing in his library, wearing a maid's uniform, daring him to listen. The library confrontation should have ended things, but it didn't. If anything, it made everything worse. Eric Adams couldn't stop watching Karen, not just through the monitors, but through glances, hallway encounters, half-finished conversations with staff that turned to whispers when he entered the room. He saw her everywhere, and he didn't trust her for a second. Not anymore. At night, he reviewed his company's legal inbox. A quiet inquiry had landed from a federal oversight committee, something vague about hiring practices and education-related grants distributed through the Adams Foundation. Nothing formal yet, but it wasn't random. Someone had pointed them here, and he had a gut-wrenching suspicion about who. That week, Eric returned home early again, this time unannounced. From the hallway outside Anna's room, he heard soft laughter, her laughter, and the faint sound of hands moving. He edged closer. Inside, Karen and Anna were seated on the floor, signing to each other using flashcards. The iPad on the bed was recording. Anna was mid-sentence. Miss Karen listens with her eyes. "She makes me feel heard." Eric froze. Karen hadn't seen him yet. Anna continued, "Sometimes I think Daddy wants me to be quiet. But Miss Karen says silence can still be strong." Karen smiled warmly, brushing a strand of Anna's hair behind her ear. "That's right, sweetheart. Some of the strongest voices don't make a sound." Eric turned and walked away before they could see him. He didn't want to know what else Anna was saying. Later that night, Eric confronted Karen again, this time in the kitchen as she was washing dishes. "You're recording her," he accused. Karen didn't stop. She rinsed a plate, set it in the rack. "She records herself." "On a device I paid for," he snapped. Karen dried her hands. "She documents her life, her feelings, her growth. That's what any child should be encouraged to do." Eric stepped closer. "Don't twist this. You've been collecting footage, gathering information. You came here with an agenda." Karen didn't flinch. "And what agenda would that be, Mr. Adams?" "You want to ruin me." She looked at him then, calm, steady, eyes sad. "No," she said. "You're doing that all by yourself." Karen knew what was coming. She had already backed up everything, every document she'd found, about the Adams Foundation's discriminatory funding, policies, Every memo minimizes the importance of inclusive education. Every signed board statement Eric had approved, denying grant access to schools that enrolled non-traditional learners. She hadn't needed to look far. It had all been in the office. Upstairs, she had simply collected the truth, and the truth had a strange way of revealing itself through numbers, words, signatures, and now through Anna. Anna had begun recording daily diary messages without prompting. Her little videos were unscripted, raw, and painfully honest. Today I told Miss Karen that I want to help other kids like me. I asked Daddy why he didn't sign with me. He said he's busy. I think he's scared, Miss Karen said even. Scared people can learn. Eric's spiral quickened. He ordered Karen's room to be searched. He had Dylan monitor her internet activity. Nothing. Clean. Too clean, which only made it worse. Finally, one night, he snapped. He came storming into the East Wing, where Karen was organizing educational supplies in the study. You think I don't see what you're doing? He barked. Karen didn't turn. I think you're finally starting to. He stepped in front of her. You manipulated my daughter, used her. All this? He gestured around the room. This was never about helping her. It was about getting back at me. Karen looked at him. There was no malice in her expression. Just quiet exhaustion. She's not a weapon, Mr. Adams. She's a child. One who was never given the tools to speak. I gave her what I could. You're done here, he growled. You're fired. Effective immediately. Karen didn't argue. She calmly picked up her notebook, placed it in her bag, and stepped toward the door. But before leaving, she turned. Her voice was soft. Final. You can fire me. Mr. Adams. But you can't fire the truth. She held his gaze. It's already speaking, through your daughter. And with that, she left. Eric stood alone in the room, heart pounding, rage bubbling beneath his skin, but something else, too, fear, not of Karen, but of what she had said, of what Anna had become, and of the silence he'd tried so hard to preserve, finally crumbling around him. 3 days after he fired her, Eric Adams stood under the stage lights at a Neural Grid press conference, delivering what should have been a celebration. We are proud to announce our expansion into next-generation educational AI, he said into the mic, face composed, voice rehearsed. Technology that ensures no child is left behind. The crowd applauded politely. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. But something in his chest was tight, like the words he was speaking didn't belong to him anymore. He scanned the audience, looking for comfort, but saw only forced smiles and expectant stares. Then a commotion, a flurry of movement near the back. One by one, phones buzzed. Screens lit up, heads turned. Ladies and gentlemen, came a voice over the room's PA system. Not Eric's voice, and not anyone from the Neural Grid team. We interrupt this broadcast for a developing story. Every monitor behind Eric, screens meant to display Neural Grid's new interface, suddenly cut to black, then a video feed. It was a woman, standing behind a podium, calm, poised, familiar. Karen, but not as a maid. This was Dr. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell. Her name appeared on the lower third banner. Whistleblower exposes Billionaire's role in education discrimination scandal. Eric's throat dried instantly. He stepped back from the mic. Eyes locked on the screen, Dr. Mitchell began to speak. My name is Dr. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell. I was once a leading voice in inclusive education for children with disabilities and language delays, until my research was silenced. She lifted a stack of printed documents, held them up for the camera. Here are internal memos from the Adams Foundation, approving policies that quietly cut funding to schools supporting nonverbal students. Emails dismissing inclusion as inefficient, signed by board members under Eric Adams's leadership. The crowd gasped. Reporters surged forward. Karen continued, steady as ever. I lost my career because I exposed these truths, but I did not lose my voice. I simply had to find a new way to speak. Then came the final blow. The screens behind her shifted. A new video began to play, one that made the entire room fall silent. Anna sitting in her bedroom, lit by soft morning light, her iPad resting in her lap. She looked into the camera, hands moving gracefully. My daddy's company hurt Miss Karen, but she still helped me talk. She paused, fingers trembling. Miss Karen taught me that silence doesn't mean invisible. She showed me how to be brave. Eric's knees nearly buckled. The little voice he had ignored for so long was now being heard by millions. Within an hour, headlines flooded every major network. Neural grid faces backlash after whistleblower revelation. Inclusive education sabotaged by Billionaire's foundation. Leaked documents show. The MAID was a doctor, and the system tried to erase her. Neural grid stock dropped 28% before the market even closed. By evening, major investors had pulled out. Board members issued statements expressing concern and reevaluating leadership. By midnight, Eric's legal team advised him to prepare for a federal investigation. At home, he sat in his darkened office, the screens around him blank. Anna's video replayed on a loop in his mind. He remembered the first time he held her as a baby, fragile, perfect, silent. He remembered the therapists, the frustration, the endless specialists. He threw money at hoping she would just be normal. But Karen had never asked Anna to be normal. She'd helped her be heard. And Eric, who thought he could fix anything with enough cash, had never listened. Later that night, Anna wandered into his office. She held her iPad in one hand. He looked up. "Hollow," she signed slowly, her eyes clear and steady. "Are you mad at Miss Karen?" He swallowed hard. "No," he whispered. "I'm ashamed." Anna stepped closer, placing the iPad gently on his desk. Then she reached for his hand. Gently, she signed into his palm. "I love you, Daddy." Tears welled in his eyes. He didn't deserve it. But she gave it anyway. Outside, the empire he'd built was crumbling. But inside, for the first time in his life, something was being rebuilt, not with money, not with power, but with grace and truth. 6 months had passed since the reckoning. Since the empire fell, since Eric Adams stopped being a titan and started becoming a man, the mansion in Beverly Hills was gone, sold quietly like a secret. The cars, the staff, the private security, the stock portfolios, all traded for legal settlements, federal compliance deals, and a lifetime's worth of public shame. But Eric wasn't running anymore. Not from the lawsuits, not from the headlines, and not from the truth. He now lived in a modest rental just outside Pasadena, close enough to hear the morning bell of a nearby public school through the open window. His life was quieter now, smaller. But in the stillness, something unexpected had taken root. Peace. And on most days, that peace had a name, Anna. The Mitchell Institute for Inclusive Education stood on the corner of a sunlit street, wrapped in ivy and warmth. It had once been a struggling community center, long neglected, until donors from around the world, moved by Karen's story and Anna's voice, transformed it into a school for those the world had forgotten. It bore Karen's name now, Dr. Karen Elizabeth Mitchell, in proud lettering above the glass doors. Inside, every hallway pulsed with energy, children signing, laughing, learning. There were no uniforms, no strict codes, just dignity, structure, and love. At the heart of it all was Anna. She wore a yellow lanyard that read Student Ambassador, and she took the role seriously. She gave tours in sign language, helped new students feel safe, and led assemblies with the kind of radiant confidence that once felt like an impossibility. And somewhere in the background, quieter than he had ever been in his former life, was Eric, mopping floors, fixing light bulbs, taking out the trash. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. On a cool spring morning, sunlight spilled through the Institute's east wing as children filed into classrooms, backpacks bouncing and hands flying with early morning chatter. Eric pushed open the double doors with his mop bucket in tow. He wore simple jeans and a gray t-shirt. His hair was longer now. His eyes are softer. The hallway smelled like pencil shavings and lavender. A small boy waved at him shyly as he passed. Eric waved back. He reached the main hall and paused. Karen stood at the whiteboard, preparing slides for a parent workshop. She wore a deep green blouse, her curls pulled back, glasses resting low on her nose. She hadn't noticed him yet. Eric cleared his throat. She looked up. Their eyes met. "Dr. Mitchell," he said, voice steady. Karen blinked, surprised. A small smile played at the corner of her lips. "You came to clean?" she asked, teasing gently. Eric shook his head, a quiet smile returning. "No," he said softly. "To listen." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply nodded and returned to her work, leaving the door open behind her. Eric began mopping the floor, slow and methodical, each swipe deliberate. Not as penance, but as a presence. He was there, present, grounded, and when Anna spotted him from the opposite hallway, her whole face lit up. She dropped her math binder, ran straight toward him, and launched into his arms. He caught her mid-run, lifting her off the floor with a surprised laugh. She pulled back just enough to sign, "I love you, Daddy." His hands trembled for a moment. Then slowly, carefully, he signed back, "I love you too." Anna blinked, then beamed. It wasn't perfect. His hands weren't as fluid as hers, but the meaning was crystal clear. It was the first time he'd said it in her language. Later that day, Eric sat in the back of the classroom during Karen's workshop. The topic was the power of alternative communication. Parents nodded as Karen explained how signing opened pathways not just between children and teachers, but between hearts. She gestured toward the screen behind her, a still from Anna's video diary. The caption read, "My hands are my voice." Eric looked at his daughter, seated in the front row, translating Karen's words into signs for a student next to her. She didn't glance back, didn't look for his approval. She didn't need to anymore, and that somehow was what made his eyes sting with tears. When the session ended, Karen approached him near the exit. She was holding a paper, a letter by the looks of it. "It's from Anna," she said. "She wrote it for you in class. I wanted you to have it privately." Eric unfolded the page, hands suddenly unsteady. It read, "Dear Daddy, I used to think you couldn't hear me, but now I know you just didn't know how. Miss Karen taught me that people can learn new languages at any age, even grown-ups, even billionaires. You're learning mine, and I'm proud of you. Thank you for listening. I love you." Anna, the ink blurred under his eyes before he could finish reading it. He folded the letter with reverence, as if it were holy. "Thank you," he whispered to Karen. She nodded once, then walked past him, her voice like wind. "She was always speaking." "Eric, you just finally chose to hear her." That night, after the last bell rang and the children had gone home, Eric remained behind to sweep the front steps. The golden hour sun cast long shadows across the building, lighting up the name etched in bronze above the entrance, the Mitchell Institute. He stood there a moment, broom in hand, and looked up at it, not with pride, but with peace. He had helped build a world where his daughter, and children like her, could be heard. And in that silence, in that stillness, he finally understood. This was what real legacy looked like. Not power, not wealth, but language, the kind you feel in your bones, the kind that doesn't need sound to carry weight. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.